Okay, so now we're going to be talking about the product rule. The product rule is something you use whenever you have two functions multiplied together and you're trying to find the derivative of that. So the actual equation is fg prime of x equals to f of x times g prime of x plus g of x times f prime of x. Now, to make sense of what that means, we can look at when you'd use this. So here are two functions you'd use it on. Here you have y equals 4x squared times e to the x, and then you have y equals 3x times sine x. Now, the reason you use this here, you use the product rule on these functions, is because the overarching function is these two things together, but you can really separate it into f of x being 4x squared and g of x just being e to the x. And you can do the same here. You can make your f of x 3x and your g of x sine x. And so what you do, now that you know that, you can use the equation and use your f of x just being 4x squared, g of x being e of x, your g prime of x would be the derivative of e to the x, and your f prime of x would be your derivative of 4x squared. So that's all it is, and it's very easy to use. The only restrictions for this equation is that both f of x and g of x need to be differentiable. This makes sense because you're finding the derivative of both of them at some point, so if they're not differentiable, it just won't work. So we can do some practice problems for this. We start off easy. We can start off with y equals 3x minus 5 times 2x squared minus 3. So here you can clearly see that there's two different functions being multiplied together. And so if you want to, you can use the product rule to solve this. And what you'd have to do is you'd find the derivative of y is equal to, first, just f of x, so that's your first function, 3x minus 5, multiplied by g prime of x, so you take the derivative of the second part of the function, or the second function, which would just be 4x in this case. And you do that plus g of x, which is just 2x squared minus 3, multiplied by the derivative of f of x, which is 3x minus 5. And if you want to expand that and put it together, you end up getting 18x squared minus 20x minus 9. So that is the derivative of this function. Now, it's important to know that it doesn't really matter which one you use, f of x or g of x, as long as you make sure you use both. As long as one is g of x and one is f of x. It also doesn't matter which one of these you do first. You could do g of x times f prime of x plus f of x times g prime of x first, just because it's added together. You can do it any order you want. Just make sure you do both of these things at some point. So to a slightly harder question here, we have y equals sine x times e to the x. And so you can see that there's two functions going on. One would be sine x, one would be e to the x. So you use your equation, fg prime of x, which is this whole thing, and you find first your f of x, which is just the first function as it is, multiplied by g prime of x, which would be the derivative of your second function. So e to the x is actually e to the x, this derivative, so that's good. And then add e to the x, which is just g of x, your second function as it is, multiplied by f prime of x, so the derivative of your first function. In this case, it's sine x, so it becomes cos x. So then if you want to take out e to the x, you can get the derivative of this function is equal to e to the x times sine x plus cos x.